Now, a couple things I want to make note of. To me, this bridge is a bit long, and there's some things happening within the bridge that I like and some things that I don't like. So I want to customize it. If we listen to the beginning of the bridge here, there's some chords actually in there that I don't really like. We could actually change them, but I'm going to do something different. So let's take a listen. And I'm going to temporarily disable this follow host so that I can navigate exclusively in EZKeys. You'll notice if I keep follow host on, if I go to my bridge, put my cursor there, it's still honoring where my cursor is in Studio One. Right now I don't want it to do that, so let's go ahead and disable that, and now when I click on the bridge, it should play. So those chords that happen right there just aren't doing it for me. And I also don't like the very end of this second block. So this is kind of a swung 6/8, but right there, it changes to more of a straight rhythmic pattern, which may work in some cases. I just don't like it for what I'm wanting to do. So I have some things within the bridge I don't like, and I want to shorten it. Here's what I'm going to do. I actually like the beginning of this fourth block. So this is the fourth block from the bridge. And what we can do, if I right click, I can say show in browser, so I know it's the fourth variation of the bridge. So that's a nice way to go back and remember which variation you used. Right click, show in browser, so I have variation 2, variation 4. In variation 4, I really like the first half. So I want to keep that. I could actually make a cut there, or I can just bring the block back halfway, and that's all I'm going to use. And I also like the second half of this first variation. Remember, right about here, there's some chords that I don't like. Right there. But listen to the second half. Starting at measure 53. This all sounds fine to me, and I do like this build here. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to take the second half of variation 2, the first half of variation 4. I'm actually going to move this MIDI block over, start with variation 4. And now we have a shorter bridge, and let's take a listen to see how that works together. Now, I like that much better. Once again, this is variation 4, the first half, and we have the second half of variation 2. There are no rules here. Find what you like. You can chop things up however you want. If the chord progression works and sounds good to you, you can run with it. So now I have a little bit of a gap here. No problem. I'm just going to select these blocks, move them over, it snaps together, and now I can play my bridge, which is the shorter version and the version that I cut together from these two variations. And then let's see how that translates as it goes into the third chorus. And that sounds good to me, so I'm going to stick with that variation of the bridge. Now let's go ahead and jump to the very end here. So I'm using a verse variation and an intro variation, but I want to do the same thing I did with the bridge. I want to make some adjustments, make that outro shorter, and use just parts of each of those blocks, parts of this verse block and part of this intro block. So that will become my outro and we'll make it a bit shorter here. So let's take a listen to it as is. I like the first half of this verse variation, so we're just going to cut it, or I can move this tail, so we use half of it. We'll actually use this cut tool because that works just as well. So we'll cut that in half, and we're going to cut this intro block in half as well. So we'll just go ahead and remove the second half of this verse block, and we'll remove the first half of this intro block. I'm basically using the first half of the verse block, and this is verse variation 3, and then I have the second half of this intro block, which is intro variation 1. I'll just move this over. Now we have a shorter outro. Let's take a listen. And actually, I'll back up just a bit. So we'll come in from the third chorus, or part of it anyway. Let's go halfway through the third chorus into this outro that I've created using half of a verse block and half of an intro block. And I really like that. I like how when it goes out of the third chorus into this outro, which is this verse block, it's reminiscent of the very beginning of the song. And then once we get to this intro block, it actually simplifies. So I really like that once again because it's just a nice way to wind down at the end of this song. Now we still need to address the last chord of the song, because right now there is nothing there. It doesn't really resolve. There's no real ending to the song. So what I'm going to do to resolve that is we're actually just going to grab variation 1 from the intro, and we'll bring it in at the very end. And I'm just going to use that first chord of that block. If we take a listen, it actually resolves well with this song. We just have to stop it from the additional rhythmic variations and chord progressions that happen within that block. So I'll just shorten that block, and I'll actually zoom in a bit more here. So really, we're just getting that chord and nothing else. Now it's still going to cut off, but at least we have that chord that resolves the song and resolves the chord progression. I will fix the fact that it cuts off later as I bring the MIDI into Studio One. But let's go ahead and take a listen, and you'll hear once again that we have a chord that resolves the song, resolves the chord progression, even though it cuts off at the very end. So that will work for now. So I like what we've done with the bridge, and I like what we've done with the outro of this song. The first verse, first chorus, second verse, second chorus is fine as is. I do want to work with the intro just a bit. It's a bit long to me, so I want to shorten it, and I want to use just sections of these variations once again. So if I right click, go show in browser, I'm using intro variation 2 and intro variation 3. Let's take a listen to that, and then we will do some work to shorten the intro as well. So to me, I feel like right there, the intro could be over. The fact that it keeps going seems a bit long to me. I think we can get to the verse a bit sooner. And there we are at the verse. To shorten the intro, I'll just make a similar change that I did to the bridge and the outro. I'm going to use the first half of this intro, and we will use the second half of this second intro block. So really, once we bring this over, and we'll move the whole thing back here in a minute, let's take a listen to this shortened intro. So we have the first half of variation 2 and the second half of variation 3. And so I like that a lot better. Shorter intro, we get right into the verse, and I'm using elements of variation 2 and variation 3 from those intro blocks that I like to create that shorter intro. So at this point, I'm happy with the arrangement, and let's go ahead and move this all back to the beginning so that everything is starting at the very beginning on measure 1. And actually, while we're talking about moving the whole arrangement here, I'm going to move this over so that it all starts on measure 2. Now, this is not a necessary step, but it is something I like to do. The reason is it gives me some headroom at the beginning if I wanted to put, let's say, a click track, maybe a measure of click, if I wanted to perform to this song live, or if I wanted to record a drum part. That way, I have a bit of leverage within the song. It doesn't start right on measure 1, and it has one measure of nothing, or I can add a click, and that way there's something that leads me into the song. Again, not necessary for you to do, but this is a part of my own workflow. So I'll go ahead and start the song on measure 2.